managed for conservation, or whether it's just your backyard, whether it's whether it's the block that you live on in an urban space. The art and science of tracking for me is so much about just training the eyes to see what's already there. And in that process, as trackers in this modern time, there's so much to be seen that's under the surface, especially with so much stress on ecosystems and so much stress on species. Sometimes there's species that we would never know are under our nose, never know that they're there to even offer some kind of conservation efforts. And so with such things as birding, we get we're lucky, like most birds we can catch sight of in the daytime. That's so beautiful. It's lovely to be able to see them. But especially with animal tracking, our mammal neighbors are so few and far between. To see in the daytime. So often moving at night. And something that tracking has done for us over time, over the years as human beings, is really to illuminate who's there, who are our neighbors when we're not looking, who are our neighbors when we're taking the night shift to sleep and they're taking the night shift to move around and do what they do. And so to be able to catch sight of the footprints that are behind, to be able to find their scats, to find their nests and their cavities, their feeding behaviors, is really something that wildlife tracking can really bring to us as people who live really right in our midst, and sometimes we don't know it. One of the slides that I was going to offer, it's just as put it out. I was just taking a walk and saw some little hickory nuts. They were kind of almost rolling out of the bottom of a tree, and they had these really smooth holes in them where the nut meat had been taken out, and that's the kind of the telltale sign of flying squirrels. For me, I just light up when I see that, when I remember that the flying squirrels are there the whole time, and we're never crossing paths. We have absolutely opposite shifts in this world. And as soon as the lights go out and I'm asleep, they are wide awake and eating those hickory nuts all night long, flying from tree to tree above my head. But to find those places and those evidences of our neighbors who are right under our noses or above our noses in that case, is something that very few wildlife cameras, for instance, are going to catch, unless someone's really trying. And one can if they try really hard to catch flies on camera. But all to say that wildlife cameras and camera trapping doesn't replace that ancient way that humans have over time really known who's there and known how to take care of who's there because we're aware of that. So whether it's modern conservation efforts or millennia old, without actually having an awareness of who's there, and then honing our ability to understand their habits. Those are not new things. Those are things that have been with us as humans, perhaps forever. Read books about the diets of all of our mammal neighbors, but their diets are written right there in our forests and fields. And constantly. They're written, like their diets are written daily. There's a diary written by that flying squirrel every day. And it's, oh, what does a flying squirrel eat? You know, I can look into a book about it, but I can also go out and find those places that they live in and really understand what they're eating right now, not what a book says that that they may eat at times of the year. The other day, we had a group out. I'll share about this process in a moment. I had a group out, and there was a process where I was asking people questions. It's kind of what I do for a living. It's like the majority of my work as a wildlife tracker is now certifying wildlife trackers and educating wildlife trackers. And it used to be really, I don't know, different things like going and finding lynx tracks in snow and reporting, okay, where are the lynx moving? Do they have, do the mamas have young this year? How many young? What are they doing? Where are they going? Who have they eaten today? I don't know. I think it's pretty fun work. It's pretty solitary work. And I'm kind of a people person. I'm like a people person with an introverted kind of tendency. So I'll try to explain that. Yeah, in times past, I was doing wolf den surveys and finding, okay, where are the wolves denning in Glacier National Park? How can that help us to understand their dynamics and what they need for space? Yeah, policy decisions can be made based on those things. But at the same time, I really love to fire groups up about what they can find in the more maybe quote unquote mundane existence of a backyard or or the corner of their block. Yeah, conservation fields or forests. Yeah, but I had this group the other day, and one of the questions that I was posing was regarding there was a raccoon scat, and raccoon scats come often by the dozen, maybe a baker's dozen. Yeah, they like to put it all in one place very often. That's absolutely the diary of the raccoons. Yeah, raccoons diet. And the day before, I'd seen grapes, wild grapes, growing really low to the ground. And as I'm looking at these grapes, I thought, oh, they look tasty. And then I remember this kind of hazardous tale of like, oh, never eat anything that a fox could have peed on. And so I still kind of walk around with that mentality. I'm like, well, I'm asking myself, like, well, could a fox reasonably pee on that? Just in case. And I think it's a little bit of an urban legend anyway, but you heard it here. So I saw the grapes, and the person who was hosting me, we were out near Buffalo. I said, wow, grapes. And she said, yeah, no, of course they're grapes. This is time of year. And I said, oh, but look at where they are. And they're right at eye level for so many animals who are all over the fruits this time of year for those omnivores. So there's tracking and seeing what they've been eating, but then there's also seeing what they ought to be eating and scratching our heads about that and predicting, oh, well, if nobody's eaten them yet, perhaps tonight, either the fox or the raccoon or the marten or the fisher are going to combine, and the bobcat will not, because they're obligated to be carnivores, the strictest carnivores around here, but they just won't eat fruit. Find a bobcat scat with a bunch of fruit in it. Guess what? Not a bobcat scat. Yeah. So there was this raccoon scat, and she said, oh well, there are so many grapes this year that they can't possibly eat them all. So that was cool too, because there's this. So it's also the abundance of them being all available but not eaten. It also speaks to how the grapes are doing this year, which I just feel like there's this rabbit hole of questions and answers and curiosities that come with every little mystery. But there were seeds in the raccoon's scat And sure enough, they were grape seeds. And I only know that because I'm a curious person and a wildlife tracker. And so anytime I'm getting something with seeds, I like compulsively have to like spit some out and look at them and see what their shape is, what they look like, you know. Because the curiosity doesn't stop. And as I tell people, well, if you want to pursue tracking, just don't stop being curious. You know, that's it. Yeah. So I saw these grape seeds and suggested, oh yeah, well just what were the raccoons eating? That was a question. Anyway, yeah. Whose stat is it? What were they eating? And so yeah, so there were a lot of different kind of curiosities and methods. But the person who I noticed, because then the group kind of goes off and they do their own thing, and they kind of come to the end of their mystery in the way that they were, as if they were alone. So, and I just kind of stand, just on the side and just wait for folks to offer their opinions and answers, and then we chat about it and yeah, see what we can learn from it, and then move on to the next thing. But I saw this one woman walk straight. She stumbled. She didn't want to look at that raccoon scat for more than 2 seconds, and then she went in the opposite direction. I was like, oh, and then I saw her on the edge of the forested field, looking at rose hips, crushing up the rose hips, going over to this, going over to that, pressing the food, looking at the seeds, and then I don't know. She went over to what looked like a grapevine, and came straight away. My answer. Okay. So there's also this kind of, you can think about it all day long, or you can just actually go do it and go pursue the answers that you're curious about. So that was kind of the diet, the diet journal of the raccoon for the past week was very clearly, grapes. So I guess they'll probably switch up at some point when all those grapes are gone. Yeah, so this offering that we're doing is also it's similar to that. It's a process of a workshop where people can come and learn about facts and science of animals, and then also perhaps become certified as a result of the questions that they're answering. Yeah, and whether they get curious and go find what grapes and crush them up, but yeah, from heron tracks to otter tracks to it's bobcat tracks last weekend. I do tracker certifications through an organization aptly named Tracker Certification in North America. Yeah, and we do we offer these tracking certifications under an organization called Cybertrack. Has anybody heard of Cybertrack? It's really okay if you haven't, because then I can say, oh, this is it's an organization that came to be in the very late 80s, early 90s, which feels like kind of forever ago. Yeah, my kids asked me about the 1900s, and so in Cybertracker as an organization, it's an organization that comes from a very different place in Southern Africa. Although it's not even 40 years ago. There was something very peculiar in the air. A pattern started to emerge, and people were calling it global warming. Global warming. At that time, I hear it more often referred to as like climate chaos now, which is pretty apt. Two mega hurricanes in 2 weeks. Yeah, and that's to start looking at it as maybe that's pretty bad. in those days, it was, you know, as you probably remember, like, yeah, it was kind of a fringe idea, a fringe thing to do research about. One person in South Africa, who is a co-founder of Cybertrekker, his name's Louis Liebenberg, and he was very, very concerned, very interested in supporting efforts to track the patterns that emerge in the future that are, you know, the result of global warming, climate change. He was interested in wildlife tracking down there in South Africa. Wildlife is a whole other story, to say the least. Yeah, I mean, you need to be pretty on your game to walk out into the forest and just poke around and see what you can find, right? Like, I don't know, yeah, you might find a python this thick, you might find an elephant the size of this room. Yeah, you might find a lion just barely too big to fit under this table. Yeah, and so there is a different dynamic, sure, for sure. And there's also such a mega population there. In times that I've been there, it's like looking at the landscape, looking at it, it's so, in some places, so sparsely vegetated and so richly mammaled. It's like the mammal, the density of mammals there is otherworldly. And so Louis wanted to track this patterns that emerge. Yeah, what changes with migration routes? How do migration routes change? They will, and they have. Presence and absence of animals. Some animals come in when things are shifting. I know opossums just keep creeping in further and further into the hills and further north, and I see their signs in central to almost northern Maine. And I'm, wow, I don't know if I used to see opossums up here so long ago. Yeah, and so his vision was really to integrate wildlife tracking into conservation science and to really contribute to the study of climate change. And he was just, you know, at that point, he was pretty okay at tracking and identifying tracks and signs and following animals. Okay, I did pretty good even, you know. But having hit his limit on that, he really wanted to pursue that technology, tracking this technology. It's a really vibrant technology that's constantly increasing efficacy. As people learn more and pass it on, that's real time, real time technological growth. And so he went to the central Kalahari, that desert that's quite inhospitable to humans, and sought out the San people there. A number of family groups of the San people who have been tracking, practicing tracking, living on the tracking, like literally since the beginning of time. You ask them, like, okay, how long have you been tracking this culture? Forever, and we have not stopped. Yeah, that's it. And the title of this offering is out of sight, out of mind. And if ever there's a culture who's quite out of sight, probably the one who's marginalized to the point where they're living in the center of a pretty rough inhospitable place like Kalahari. And so they were very instrumental in teaching Louis tracking and demonstrated such excellent accuracy and contributed such amazing data that as they were working together, it was very clear that wow, these people are absolutely exceptional. The people who are trackers, not every song person's a tracker, right? But those who are excellent at it were absolutely, yeah, just mind. And so then we're talking about conservation science, highly literate, uh, highly literate processes of data collection, needing absolutely off the charts skill and people who are extremely literate in their respects, but very much oral literate, like the spoken word and the written and what's written in the sand. You almost can't put one past anybody like who's been studying tracking for their whole life in that context. And so in that relationship that formed, they very soon brought this conundrum and said, hey, we're employed doing pretty menial things in our lives. And it seems that we're quite valued by, in what we have to offer as trackers. Like, we want jobs, like who doesn't want a job doing what they love to do and what they're excellent at. And so it was kind of there was this call to action, like, hey, employ us. And so we created this software with a software developer that was icon driven, that was connected to a GPS. It was on a Palm Pilot. I don't know if you ever heard of those. Yeah, I had one. Click. Yeah. And so with that technology, people were able to enter data, and it was downloaded into maps, and really rich information started to come in. As a result. And this is almost like 40 years ago, right? And I think it's pretty comical now. I always hold this up and I say, right, like that's mind blowing. But now, every like 3 or 4-year-old is having one of these better than babies. I feel like it's little icons. I can tell you anything with a little picture of this and that. But long ago, that was not the case. So jobs in tracking and conservation started to be available, and that's when you need to certify trackers, because if you say, hey, who's a tracker? I've got some really great jobs available. Everybody's a tracker, right? Like, oh yeah, why not? Yeah, give me one of those things. I'll collect you some data, but it's not all. But you need people who are skilled in this role, and so that's where that idea came to be. Is in collaboration with some people, working to learn how to. And it kind of reflects a very old way of doing things, which is, hey, you see that? What is it? Hey, see that? Why did that happen? You see that? What's inside? Yeah. Answer, and then you talk about what it is, and you get really into it, and get excited about it. Yeah. And what we hadn't been seeing starting to come to light, and what we hadn't been seeing is starting to actually inform, hopefully very quickly inform our actions. Because I think we can just make observations and predictions and do nothing about what we see around the corner, or we can do something. So hopefully that the ways wildlife tracking search conservation can actually inform policies, and actually inform really sound change that can support all of us, not just people but the wild neighbors, in our neighborhoods too. Mm. So I guess, whether we're talking about animals who are outside, and then we're kind of that's coming to light in a way that's actually visible to us by reading that. I guess I saw that, I always just call it beat, but it's the beat news is the phrase, like the newsletter, and I thought that was so cool because I feel like the tracking is such the newspaper of the day moment for me. And so this morning I was kind of fired up on this offering. And so I did myself a favor and took myself tracking. Yeah, and just took a little walk in a direction that I just don't tend to. Because I think when I choose a new pathway, I kind of, I could go look at I could read the same story every day, or I could go a different route and see what's over there. Yeah, it was yeah, I feel like it was a gorgeous morning. I integrated that into the slideshow. And so when you, Jane, said, well, it's not gonna, that's not gonna happen, I felt like, well, no problem, it already happened, and yeah, and so and I think it wouldn't have happened, it wouldn't have happened without this schedule. But yeah, I'll look at my notes for a moment. But yeah, and I think something that I wanted to highlight is that I think with this group, I feel like people are probably pretty aware of salamander, frogs, and yeah, and in general those nighttime movers on wet nights. And, spring is that time of that big night, the big migration of salamanders. I think even have a salamander on the logo, which is pretty cool. But I had my mind on them as I was coming over here, and okay, like let's all, and it's probably not salamander time, but we will have some toads, we'll have some frogs out there after we leave, and so just kind of, I think these moments too. Okay, well, as humans who choose to pay attention to the natural world, because it is a choice now. And I try to emphasize that for people. It's like nature awareness and observation hasn't always been an optional activity. As human beings, it was required for a very long time. For some human beings, it's still very much required to pay attention to the natural world in order to get through our day. And yeah, whether that would be finding tracks that suggest that there are predators, coming through our camp in the nights, and well, do we want to move? Do we want to stick around? Do we want to light a fire and just make sure it's smoky so that they smell that we're here? Whatever that is, maybe it's seeing tracks of snakes and knowing in which direction not to go. But now it is it's optional, and so to choose to pay attention is also something that maybe I feel like deserves some sense of recognition. Oh, okay, hey, it's really cool to be in a room full of people who actually are choosing that option. Like, oh yes, I choose to be aware of what's going on.
Yeah, I'm track to which direction snake is going.
Ooh, I love that question. Let's see.
Can you repeat the question also to make sure everybody online is here?
Okay, with a snake, how can we tell which direction the snake is moving? And I would say that, like, for one, the bigger the better. Bigger snake, the better the results. The clearer, the dustier the substrate, the better. But snakes do have these their widest scales are on their bellies, and so although snake scales are kind of like this shape, kind of V-shaped on their backs and their sides and most places on their bodies. On their bellies, they have these really wide scales. And they undulate, in a really subtle, and there's one direction in which it kind of very slightly digs in, and it's if you look at that texture, you can get a feel for that. Other ways that are maybe a little bit more maybe easier in varied soils is, and that can be in coarse sand, is watching. Many of them also will be slightly moving, moving back and forth, and you can see where the soil is pushed up, in a way that in a way that you can see that they must have been moving in this direction because the soil is kind of pushed like. That's not going to be an excellent. Well, hopefully the Zoomers can see what this.
Well, those are good strategies in the more western environment than the New England environment, where they're going across
Right.
grasses of different.
Yeah, and as soon as you're in grasses, sometimes you can hear the birds being upset about snakes over there, and then you can say, well, maybe, if you spooked a snake and they're going that way, and then the birds over there on the other side of the hedge are starting to get a little bit upset, maybe that could change too.
So, for a non-expert, what would be 2 or 3 things that you could alert a person to watch for?
Yeah, okay.
And again, can you repeat the question?
Thank you. Yes, yes. So for people who are less familiar with animal tracking, what are the things? 3 things, and I love that. Give me a number. 3 things that to look out for and maybe train your eyes on. Is that a good way to say it? Cool. Well, I would say that one thing to watch for that's, I think of access and accessibility. I don't want to send people over and try to send you off to find the nearest beaver pond to hang out at. I mean, do go to the local beaver pond. It will be amazing. However, I think of roads as any dirt road as a really great place. I was thinking recently, and I shouldn't say this on mic, but I'm going to. I was thinking, everybody has everybody has a book writing about tracks and signs, and I don't think I could pull it off. And then I was driving, and I thought, there's an ant mound. Oh, the fox scat over there. Cool nest over there. And then I thought, what about the driver's guide to animal tracking? And I thought I'd probably get sued a week after the publication came out because people are, looking at books in the car instead of watching the road. But keeping an eye out for wild canine scouts on roads is a really great one. They tend to mark the roadsides with their scouts, and it's a great diet journal for them. I really enjoy looking for coyote and fox scouts along roads. It takes a daily walk. Have a look for scouts that are lying on the side of the road. And if they keep accumulating there and they keep varying their diet, you're probably looking at some wild canine scouts there. Gray fox, red fox, coyote, locally, and so that's great because then you have 3 times as many species who are leaving scouts on your road. Maybe you can even just start to distinguish between the foxes and the coyote by size. Sometimes you might have some overlap. But it's great. They'll show you which fruits are ripe at that moment because they're eating a lot of fruits. Don't get distracted by so much fruit in their diet because they absolutely love fruit right now, and you'll see them their scut's just as full of fruits as raccoons are. Something else, I would say that an animal that really lights people up and is really so much more common than they're given credit for is the flying squirrels. And there should be in this region northern and southern flying squirrels. If you take a moment, in the night, in a place that's not such an urban space, and just listen, and just listen, right here, flying squirrels too, and they're often mistaken as tiny birds in the treetops, and they kind of sound like this. Really high pitched. Almost, yeah, I don't even know if anybody can hear it. I can't. But yeah, it's often them talking to each other in the trees. In most forests, you can find signs of flying squirrels. I described the hickory nuts earlier with a really very clean, very smooth, round hole in those hickory nuts. That's a nice sign to look for, especially if they're kind of popping out of a tree, out of the base of a tree. So have a look for the bases of trees where it's opened a little bit, and sometimes you can see their little scats pouring out of those tree bases. You can see their nuts, their acorns, their hickory nuts pouring out of there. And I feel like it's a really neat one because they're such a cutie. They're such a yeah, I don't know. And for such a little animal, they really own the night. They really are. Yeah, they're so active. And right under our noses. And I think that, yeah, I'd say that they're somebody who I think sometimes people say, oh, well, yeah, foxes and I'm sure they're, oh, flying squirrel. And I feel like, yeah, I can't tell you how many people have come back to me after saying, oh, no way, I'm not going to find it. And they do.
They often find scat right in the middle of the trail,
Yeah.
and I'm assuming that's marking the trail.
Yes, yeah, that will generally be the case when an animal marks the center of a trail. That will usually, yeah, that should be generally marking behavior. I mean, it's yeah, if a deer walks through and happens to poop, in the middle of the trail, so be it. But generally, that's intentional.
So by marking, are they saying this is my territory, stay out? Or beware out here?
I would say that I would give it a good, I'd label it, it's complicated. Because there's enough communication going on between groups in different territories that's a big part of it. But then I would say that there's definitely in all of some subtleties that we're not making assumptions that there's also communication with their phone as well. One other animal that I guess giving you that top three, I want to just give you the number 3, and this is off the top of my head. But I would say, it might sound funny, woodpeckers, because woodpeckers, especially the woodpeckers, I really like to give them some attention, not because their holes are hard to find or because they're hard to see, because they're all over the place, but they sort of similar to beavers creating so much habitat, creating so much life for so many other species to utilize and to live off of. There are so many animals who would be out of a home, out of a living without beavers. And I think of pileated woodpeckers in the same way, where they're creating these cavities. So paying attention to woodpeckers is not just paying attention to them, but we're actually training our eyes for all these different animals who are going to be sort of following in their footsteps, so to speak. So when we pay attention to the woodpeckers, we're also paying attention to this red and gray and flying squirrels living in their cavities. We're paying attention to wood ducks who might be nesting in that hole. So I guess I like to follow them, not for them themselves. Although I absolutely adore Renee woodpeckers, but also I think they really open a door into that whole realm of cabin nesters and cabin dwellers.
Hey, other than opossums, have you seen changes in wildlife directly related to changes in climate?
Let's see. I feel like they're my favorite example, and yeah, I mean, I think it would be hard. I think it's hard for me to say whether I've really seen patterns like beyond them as far as yeah, as far as their presence really increasing um, or decreasing. I think I would say that there seems to be a lot more of a sense of change in how we're I guess in the maybe seasonal patterns and in seeing sometimes yeah, seeing bear activity sometimes well into the winter, further into the winter than maybe is like used to be expected. And I think that's the tricky thing is what was expectable is now there's a new pattern, but we all need to pay attention for those new patterns to emerge and then draw our expectations and conclusions off of those. But then you wait 3 years, 5 years, and maybe that truth is also, it just needs adjustment to, yeah, I think tracking, I like to offer workshops with tracking and I just don't, I don't tend to schedule winter snow tracking events anymore. Some people do, more power to them, but yeah, but I think I find it stresses me out as soon as it's a week away and there's no snow on the ground. I get sweating, and like I said at the beginning, I really, I feel like for me tracking is something. It's a practice that helps me, but I want to actually use as a way to relax into it. And I think as soon as I'm watching the weather, it's in the wintertime it's kind of stressful. Yeah, let's see.
We have a comment from online,
Oh.
saying one of their favorite sites was seeing a raccoon occupying a woodpecker cave in a tree.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Yeah.
So I live in New Marlboro and there's constant reports of mountain lions.
Yeah.
Have you,
You'll get those reports for sure.
and they're certain, they're people that are like farmers and things. What do you know about this?
And can you repeat the question?
Okay, thank you, Jane. Yeah, I'm used to the format. So with mountain lion reports in the Northeast, especially the ones that are 100% confident. Yeah. There's a lot to be said about confidence. Yeah, I like to call it also a good old self-assessment. Yeah, it's I think people give their perceptions credit before it's appropriate, I think. It's not that mountain lions will never have been here. It's not that they historically weren't here. And so I don't want to absolutely say, because then I'm doing the same, I'm making the same motion with my words, is saying, well, absolutely not. In Connecticut, I don't know how many years ago now, maybe 7 years ago or something, there was an extremely reliable test done, DNA test done on a scat. And it was backtracked to DNA that was found in North Dakota, about the same cat. That story gave skeptics like me, also a healthy dose of, well, Daniel, you know, it is possible, it's just not probable. So most probable is that people have seen a coyote, or honestly, sometimes a tabby cat, like, you know, from afar or in a car, it happens. And then the other thing that is a factor is the wild pet trade, which really is a thing, and people do, people do buy outrageous. I mean, people have some ideas, you know, like, I want a mountain lion. I said, you want a what? Really? But I think when you click yes on the, you know, whatever, I don't know if you buy a mountain lion on eBay or what, but you know, it doesn't say, are you sure? This is okay, click. So there is that factor too, of people kind of, their pets outgrowing them, or them outgrowing their pets, and some pets like mountain lions can be released also. So that's kind of that's also a third, third thing that does happen.
So add on that a little bit. I think there was one that was hit by a car in Newtown, Connecticut. Like maybe within the last 3 years.
Wow, okay, yeah.
But I think they viewed that one from Minnesota.
Oh, okay. Whoa, so another one that's reliably.
There's a big male that just traveled.
Okay, yeah, so it's not, yeah, so I guess, like, I'll just say it's not unheard of, but if every one of those reports were true, we would be crawling with mountains. Yeah, so yeah, possible, happens sometimes, and there are definitely many misidentifications, and then and then also wild pet trade is a problematic thing. And then with tracks, with footprints, it's not uncommon at all to be like to see people taking photos of domestic dog tracks, big domestic dog tracks, you know, like a chunky domestic dog in really sloppy mud, far away from where people walk their dogs. Yeah, they're very commonly mistaken as you know, tracks too. Yeah.
What's your favorite animal to track and be able to call in with a call?
Ooh, let me think. Well, you know, it's funny. I spent I don't know if it's a boring answer or not, but it's been probably like 7 years, probably 7 good years hunting deer, and honestly, whether or not it's like was a hunting thing, I'm pretty convinced I'm not going to be hunting. I think it's been 5 or 7 years. But but I really, there is this thing that happens with calling in a deer, regardless of your intention, like whether it's to take a photo, whether you don't want anything from that deer, you just want to see them, or whether to eat the deer. There is something absolutely electric about a deer coming in and responding to calling. Yeah, so I'd go with deer, and I think with, you know, it's funny to say deer and then say, oh, I don't know, it's boring. I think it can bore people for someone to be passionate about deer as an animal to be tracking too. And I think, you know, the animals that I most highly recommend people study as far as footprints go are white-tailed deer, raccoon, and domestic dogs. Kid you not, that I think, you know, I think I see more people get mixed up about those 3 animals than any others. And so I think I can sometimes run into a lot of people who want to study all these, you know, I want to get to know Fisher tracks really well. But then the next time that person, you know, who's studying Fisher tracks really just very in a focused manner, as the next raccoon footprint they see, guess what they're seeing? So in that sense of how are we perceiving things, it's like there's a big check and balance called it. The question for me is, am I seeing what I want to see, or am I seeing what is what is really there, and I think all the better for me is to figure out who do I actually wanna see the signs or tracks of before I even leave the car, leave my house to go out, looking at wildlife tracks and signs. I love to ask myself, well, Daniel, who do you wanna see today? Because that's probably gonna be your first guess, and then you might wanna cool it. I want to cool it a little bit and say, well, okay, maybe don't forget raccoons exist. Yeah, they're a beautiful trickster. Yeah. I adore raccoons.
Had a nice tracking experience recently. I live on a steep road with a big dirt embankment, and there was an area where the dirt was like collapsed. And I thought I saw claw marks, so you know what it was? Because the next week I saw it,
You did?
yeah,
The animal?
yeah,
On a roadside and it was,
on my road. I
wow.
saw what it had been. Did anybody know what it was? I thought I saw claws.
Where?
No. Well, so the next week, there was a giant snapping turtle.
Oh, beautiful, very
Yeah, it was
cool.
so satisfying.
And was the snapping turtle was digging?
I think I looked it up, it was, yeah, the bucket had
Oh,
been
cool.
digging. I didn't see it digging, I saw it right near that spot, but it
Very
was like,
How big was it?
satisfying, like about this
Oh, I
big.
love it, I
Yeah,
love snapping.
and then I wanted to tell you that for the last 3 summers, I've been spending time in the Brazilian Amazon with an entomologist. So I've like been deep in the last place we went to was this area of Presidente Figueiredo, it's like a national park. And for 2 weeks, six dogs were killed by jaguars in that area. So I decided to
Wow.
record sound at dusk down the dirt road where we were, and Chico, the entomologist, came running after me, but while I was there and it was getting dark, you don't see anything in the Amazon in the day, like nothing. But at night, it's insane.
Wow.
So as dusk formed, I couldn't believe what I was seeing, just animals crossing the road like you've never seen here. You see chipmunks, right, run? Imagine like running. Anyway, I don't know, I didn't see or smell the jaguar, but
Oh, I would love to see and smell it.
I saw one that had in dissection.
Let's see, how are we doing,
I
Jane?
think we're a little after 7, so thank
Okay.
you so much. I'm so sorry, everyone, about the technical difficulties, but thank you, Dan. It was great. Memphis meeting. If I could ask everybody just to sign in. Just so we know.
So I was just gonna say, yeah, thanks again to Bee, thank you, Jane, so much for the, for the effort that it takes to make these things happen. Yeah, we're collaborating on a program on the 30th of October. Wildlife tracking, certification, workshop, a beautiful
You got
hybrid.
What day are we gonna hand out?
I believe it's a Wednesday. Is that right?
Yes, Wednesday, October 30th.
Where? Washington, Mass.
Yeah, I think
South County.
it's gonna be in October Mountain.
October Mountain it is.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, right, it's also on Pete's website.
And also, I wouldn't be wildlife tracking if my lovely dad hadn't posed all these questions to me as a teenager. What the heck is that? What the heck is that? So is my dad, Ernie. We found out about this like 2 hours ago. I thought, yeah. Happy to have you all. Thanks for being flexible.
You're welcome.
My son